and welcome back to the Boropolis Podcast. We are back with a slightly more positive podcast this week, of course. Last week's results really took its toll on the podcast. I think the tone throughout was a pretty glum one, wasn't it? But thankfully, we don't have a performance like the QBR game to talk about this week. As always, because of the transfer window continuing throughout the season and not yet closing, we've got plenty to talk about on that front. We've got a couple of signings to even discuss. Okay, yes, we may be a little bit glum talking about the cup performance, but it's not the end of the world. So Nathan, as usual, I'll ask how you are. You've got a slightly more of a smiley face today than what you did when I asked you about QPR, to be honest, and rightfully so, to be honest.
Yeah, sort of just discarding the cup and my emotions from that in midweek and moving on to today after a good competitive game in the Championship to whet the appetite. My first game of the season today, so very much enjoyable.
Yeah, definitely. We should say as well, I should say, I think it is my laptop, so don't crucify me too much. The quality on YouTube, if you have been watching, wasn't great last week. I think it's my webcam, in all honesty, Nathan. So I'll take the blame for that one. But hopefully we can get that fixed in the future if you do watch on YouTube, because no one wants to watch two really looking fellas chatting but moving on from that, because I don't want him too downbeat. Good news to start. Matthew Hoppe, and it is pronounced Hoppe. I was a little bit unsure up until we got a bit of confirmation on it. As signed on the day of the cup game. I think we all knew it was sort of already done and dusted last week. But confirmation come through. A few people thought it was Eminem when he was announced. It wasn't obviously him though. I'm not sure how Matthew Hoppe is in terms of dropping bars, but I think we'll let him just get on with his football for the meantime. He's obviously in the building, Nathan. We spoke about, his goal record's not really stand out, but it certainly looks like Kieran Scott signing a bit of a project, and while as of course said that he's a striker that we're going to put a lot of work into, rather than someone that's going to go straight in the first 11.
Yeah, it looks like a very much like a development signing, if I'm honest, and I think that's the words that the club have used as well. Chris Wilder saying that Hoppe signed on a 4-year deal. It's probably not going to come straight away with him. Not expecting goals from the get-go, but a player that we're going to look to develop and improve in the future, and hopefully he's going to be a big signing in years to come for us.
Yeah. Bizarrely, just to mention it as well, I know there was that big quote during the week when Wilder mentioned that he'd asked for the number 9 shirt and been told, no, you can't have it because we want to bring in, a proper number 9. Since that point, he has decided on the 13 shirt, which for me, I'm one of them people that's a little bit sort of weird and superstitious about numbers, and 13 would have been my last pick. So, I mean, he wears that number for America. If it's going to make him play better, then happy days. But 13 seems a bizarre choice. For me, just touching on that quote, actually, Nathan, Chris Wilder said, we want to bring in a 9, a 10, a 4, a 5, and I believe a 7, potentially, because that was the number that Tav would have vacated when he obviously moved to Bournemouth. Of course, we'll talk about our new number 4 slightly after the Barnsley game, because we'll do it in chronological order. But there was a few people sort of got really excited. There was a few people that were a little bit sort of concerned by the quote, trying to make out the potential while it might be setting out his stall so that, if he doesn't get those, it almost gives him something to fall back on, something to blame if that doesn't happen and things don't go his way. What did you make of the quote and the fact he was, so adamant that he would get those numbers and those players that he wants so much?
Yeah, I think it's been reiterated by Wilder over the last few weeks that 5 signings is what he wants to make up this current group, and Matthew Hoppe wasn't one of those 5. I think he wants signings for the here and now, and that is the reason behind stating the numbers, the 4, 5, 7, 9 and 10. It'll be interesting to see just how quickly those numbers come through the door. Of course, we're a few months into the transfer window now, and we haven't really put that stamp on the midfield positions and the forward positions as of yet. But with one coming in the door following the Barnsley game, hopefully many will start following through as the window nears a close in the upcoming weeks.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned it there, the Barnsley game, of course, midweek. I think we all kind of, I think putting it as brutally honest as possible, I think we could be used sort of half-arse in the preview last week. But I think, to be honest, we all kind of knew it would be a very stripped-back version of Chris Wilder's Middlesbrough team. It certainly was. There was wholesale changes. And for me, we didn't sort of really talk about it last week, but I know, of course, we had the great EFL Cup run last year. But I know my stand in particular, and it's a, someone might say it's wrong considering that's one of the major trophies that we have won. But in terms of the League Cup and in terms of our aspirations this season, for me, it was a bit of a glorified pre-season friendly, and I wasn't too devastated about the result or what. Even before I'd gone and attended the game, I wasn't, I wasn't too fussed about what the result was going to be. Are you sort of on the same page with that, or are you one of those real sort of cup enthusiasts?
No, I think I'm the same as you, really. It's one of them cups that if you're not in the latter rounds of it, then it probably doesn't matter at all. And to a club like us in our current position, where our real aim is going for promotion out of the second tier and into the Premier League, then it can probably just be discarded. And in all fairness, I think we did give it a good go on the night, albeit with a lot of younger lads in that side as well. We saw some senior players in that side, Dale Fry getting minutes, Paddy McNair as well. Chuba came off the bench, Watmore started the game, Force as well playing a part. But yeah, I think it was really a game that sort of we probably could have done without, and it just seems to get in the way of the footballing calendar early on in the season. And yeah, you can see from a bigger side's perspective, a Liverpool or a Manchester City, why they'd probably make claims that they don't need to play in the latter rounds, and hence why they don't.
Yeah, exactly. In terms of you touched on it there, we saw Dale Fry and McNair get some minutes. From the youngsters that played, I think you mentioned Joe Gibson in the last podcast. He obviously took a position in the midfield. We also saw Hayden Hackney, who out on loan last season at Scunthorpe, didn't have the most successful of loan spells, but is quite highly thought of in the academy. We also saw Sonny Finch, who I know I mentioned last week, signed his first professional contract days before the game, really. So yeah, it was just nice to see that core of academy players. Not an awful lot of times you sort of get to see them have their chances, especially with I don't think it would be overstatement to say a Middlesbrough team that have aspirations of getting to the Premier League this season. I don't think we're going to see a lot of them get the chance throughout the season. But they did get that on Wednesday night. Into the action now. Actually, a very quick start from Middlesbrough. Only minutes on the clock. Duncan Watmore races through one-on-one with the Barnsley goalkeeper and fails to put the ball in the back of the net. It's on target, the strike, but the keeper makes a save. I think really, for a championship striker with as much experience as Duncan Watmore, you'd sort of be hoping that he'd put a chance like that away.
Yeah, you would be. It doesn't look like a difficult chance to finish either. He has a lot of time to think about what he wants to do with it, as he's pretty much ran from his own half, chasing the ball. And yeah, he's tried to slot it to the keeper's right. And yeah, the keeper does, I suppose, quite well to get his feet down there and make the save. But it's a sitter. It's a chance that should be taken. And if it is taken that early on in the game, it releases any sort of pressure that the team feels, and especially those younger players who are, a lot of them are making the debuts. It releases any sort of pressure that they'll feel as well, being 1-0 up so early on. So yeah, a massive chance missed, and probably the biggest chance of the game from a Middlesbrough point of view.
Yeah, I think you're right. We failed to create anything as clear-cut as what that chance was throughout the game, to be honest. And, I don't want to ever criticise, a bunch of kind of players that are making sort of their first, as you say, a lot of people making the debuts. I'm not deluded enough to say, well, you could be at this level or that level. But I think that the overall quality of the game was pretty poor from both sides. It wasn't, anything, and not that I would expect it to be, but it wasn't anything like the sort of full force of a Middlesbrough Sheffield United game with tackles flying in and chances galore and things like that. And I don't think it was ever going to be. But we did fashion a few openings. I think for me in the second half, the introductions of Dan Dodds and Belongo coming on as well, both made good impressions. Belongo had a chance. I think it's dinked at the back post, and he tries. I think he sort of wants to head it, but isn't quite sure. Then just ends up trying to knock it back into the path of Chuba Akpom, and I think his header, he just couldn't generate the power to get back on target really. But as you say, there wasn't an awful lot of action until lo and behold, and I think possibly 90+2. Benson for Barnsley has a strike from the edge of the box. Liam Roberts parries the strike. And I think, in fairness, the strike comes through a couple of bodies. I don't think it's as clear-cut as just, Roberts should be dealing with the strike better. It's probably got movement as well. He parries it out into the path of Benson, and he just follows his strike into the box and gives Barnsley the lead, and of course the winner very, very, very late in the day, and sees that team through to the next round of the cup. But overall, we don't want to dwell on it. I think the positives come from the fact we had so many debuts. The performance wasn't great, but I think Wilder summed it up well in the fact that all of those players won't go on and play every single game of their career for Middlesbrough. They might leave, they might go elsewhere, but it was just nice to see them get their chances. And, it wasn't from a fairly senior Barnsley team. It wasn't, there wasn't a huge gap in terms of either team's performance. So, you've just got to take the positives out of that, I guess, Nathan.
Yeah, you do. Those young players got the chances on Wednesday evening. Some of them played quite well in my eyes. Belongo was a standout for me. I think he's a really good prospect for us. Of course, signed in January as well from Kingstonian. So Boro doing their usual decent recruitment in and around London, which is good. Um, yeah, a result that I don't think many of us are that fussed by. On the balance of play, I did feel that the game probably would have deserved to go to penalties. It was very even in terms of any sort of chances, and it probably quite cruel that Barnsley did nick that winner in the end. But yeah, we avoid Leeds away in the second round of the Carabao Cup as Barnsley have drew them, and I know plenty of fans would have been happy to go there and play Leeds, but for me, I don't think so. I'm quite happy to give that one a miss this time.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat as you there, Nathan. From one mention of Leeds to another, that's a real stretch to sort of link it at Leeds, I guess. But what I'm going for is former Leeds midfielder Alex Mowatt, linked, of course, earlier on in the week with Middlesbrough, a potential loan move. Reported by, I think it was the Daily Mail Sport who picked it up first. And, credit to them, it said in the report that things were expected to advance later on in the week. Alex Mowatt plays for West Brom on Thursday night. And then the following day, there was sort of the whispers that he was at Rockcliffe. And then by Saturday morning, a very strange time to announce a signing. We don't usually get signings that early. But it was all done and dusted in the building. Alex Mowatt announced, and we spoke an awful lot about the balance in midfield and the role that Riley McGree plays in on the left-hand side last week. And we said we needed additions, and in fairness, maybe Chris Wilder and Kieran Scott have been listening to the podcast, because they certainly addressed that with the signing of Alex Mowatt, didn't they?
Yeah, they did, and I think it's a very decent signing for Boro as well. As you say, provides us with some depth in midfield there as well. Losing Tavernier, gave Boro a lack of depth in that left side of central midfield role, leaving us with Riley McGree and Caelan Boyd-Munt in there. So the addition of Moore gives us something in there. And just as a player, I think it's a very good signing for us, really. Of course, 2 seasons ago, Mowatt was one of the standouts in the Barnsley side that reached the playoffs under Valérien Ismaël, and he got that move to West Brom off the back of his performances for Barnsley, and also because of the link with Ismaël, who went there as manager last year. And before an injury just before Christmas last year, he looked like one of the better players for West Brom, according to a lot of their fans, in that Ismaël system. Of course, a lot of fans will see the 2 screamers that he scored for West Brom, away at Blackburn and away at Cardiff, and I think that's just a sign of what we can get from him. He also, something that stands out to me just having a think about him, is 2 goals against Middlesbrough, one at the Riverside for Leeds in 2014-15, our playoff season, and the other was from a corner, as it happened, at Oakwell, behind closed doors, under Neil Warnock, where he's had a shot from the corner kick, and Marcus Bettinelli's had a flap at it and made a real hash of it. And there you go. There's my Alex Moore thoughts and moments that come to mind when I think of him. So yeah, very good signing for us.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, I don't know if you have these sorts of players. I know I do over the years. Sort of a player that you're fully aware of. You know what they bring to teams. Always seem start games wherever they've been. Leeds, he was always in the team. West Brom, okay, yes. The reason he's ended up at Middlesbrough is because he's sort of fallen out the West Brom team. But for the majority of last season, as you said, he started the season as one of the integral players in that West Brom side. And he's always been a player that I would have quite, been happy with rather. If they'd signed for Middlesbrough, I was always impressed with him at Leeds. During the years where they had quite a few promising talents coming through the academy, like Lewis Cook, obviously, who's now at Bournemouth. And yeah, just a weird one. I don't know if I've just gone off on a tangent, but similar a Robert Snodgrass type of figure. I always wanted us to sign Robert Snodgrass, and he, of course, never did happen. But yeah, just a weird one in terms of the fact that he's eventually signed for the club after all those years of me thinking, yeah, I'd have him. But in terms of the actual signing for the here and now, as you say, offers so much on that left-hand side of the midfield three. So much experience in the Championship. We've seen his ability to shoot from distance, even in his little cameo today. Of course, we'll get on to the game, but showed his, with a few good touches, his class and his ability to keep possession and retain the ball. So yeah, I think it's a signing I'm delighted with, and one that was needed, to be honest. And I said I was worried that midfield was starting to become as much of an issue as potentially what our striker situation is. So delighted to see that addressed, and obviously a really good addition to the squad. On to, of course, the game today, Nathan, on a Sunday. In general, how do you feel about playing on a Sunday? Because I'm not a fan of it at all.
No, not really a fan, if I'm honest. Sort of yesterday at 3:00, just watching all the fixtures roll in, all the Championship results, and thinking, oh, well, we're not playing till tomorrow. And it's just kind of boring, isn't it, on a Saturday afternoon when your team's not playing? So, yeah, not the greatest, but the Commonwealth Games continues to run amok in the Championship, as we've seen with Coventry City, but that's a story for another day.
Yeah, it is. And I just found myself, to be honest, yesterday getting annoyed because obviously, as you're not watching it, you take more of an eye on the Premier League games as they're sort of coming in. I made the bold call of triple captaining Erling Haaland, expecting him to stick at least 4 past Bournemouth. And of course, he did get an assist, but there was no goals. So that just annoyed me. I must say, though, last time I checked, and people listening to this more than likely may be a part of it. Of course, we've got our own Boropolis Fantasy Premier League, and I'm pretty sure last time I checked I was 3rd. Do you know what? I'm going to check now because I was delighted when I seen it. I've actually dropped down to 8th in the space of today's games, Nathan. But out of currently in our Boropolis League, you can check where your stand is as well. We've got 455 people in that. And come Digne with me, he's managed to get himself a little top 10 after 2 weeks. I don't know how you're doing, but I was delighted with that, to be honest.
Well, I prefer not to speak on my current rank, but I'll be there or thereabouts. I haven't used my triple captain yet or any of my chips, so I'm in no worries as of yet. I will be in those Champions League places come the end of this season.
Well, that's a bold call, but it remains to be seen because I don't know where you are. I don't know if you're in the triple figures or not, but just from a quick scroll, I can't seem to see your name. So
I'm just in the triple figures.
Right. Okay. So you've got some work to do already, but maybe we'll discuss that in a few weeks' time if you've managed to get them all important points on the board. Of course, Middlesbrough did get 1 point on the board today. Sheffield United at home. First of all, Nathan, team news. I think we all sort of expected a couple of the changes which did obviously happen. Chuba Akpom come in from the start, of course. He didn't get a start at QPR away, which we both said last week we were a little bit surprised by. He was back in the team. And, of course, Paddy McNair, I think another one that we expected. Darragh Lenihan back from suspension. I think it was between him and Fry, really, for me, that I expected to play today. But they both got the nod, and Fry come back into the team as well, of course, with Bowler and Watmore dropping out. Happy with those changes, Nathan?
To a point, yes. Tuba back in from the start was one that I was happy with. We've seen over the last few weeks that he's by far our best forward at this moment in time, with his influence on games in terms of linking up and just being a menace for centre halves, really. So happy to see him back in from the start. Happy to see Paddy McNair come in, and pleasantly surprised to see him coming to the midfield as well. Of course, Crooksy being ill allowed for that change to be made, and we said last week about the energy in midfield, and I did feel that was slightly better today as well. And then the last change was Dale Fry coming in for Bowler, and it sort of changed the way that the back three was with terms to balance. And I think that the first half shows that we're crying out for that balance. Wilder seems to have been right all along, despite us watching a back three of right footers playing for us last season, and we looked pretty comfortable. It seems that the current back three that played today were slightly off it in terms of that balance, and yeah, you can see why we're pushing for that left-sided centre half, definitely. So yeah, before today, the back three looked solid, but on reflection, can see why there is balance needed 100%.
Yeah, definitely. And as you say, obviously, I didn't mention it initially, but Crooksy misses it, the game through illness. And it was a little bit of a concern for me as soon as I realised that he wasn't in the team sheet. I thought, of course, with the midfield power that Sheffield United have, mainly through Sander Berg, and a player of his height as well, it was going to be difficult to control him, even disregarding all of the ability that he has, just in terms of the physicality of it. And that man, Sanderberg, of course, signed by Chris Wilder for Sheffield United. I think we both said last week he's far too good to be playing in this division. Shows his quality after 3 minutes. Picks the ball up on the edge of the box after a little. I think we lose possession originally. Riley McGree is not really anywhere to be seen in terms of his press. I think he's too high up the pitch. And Bird fires a cross goal past Stefan. Initially, I must admit, I thought that Stefan was down fairly slowly, but I think that was, upon reflection, probably a little bit harsh on myself. It's, as I said, it's a good quality strike. I think from our point of view, Lenihan probably has to get out a little bit quicker and stop the shot. But it was by far and away not the start that I expected in the game, to be honest.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't the best start at all, really. Upon reflection, Riley McGree, nowhere to be seen, as you say, needs to be influencing what Berger's going to do, and he does nothing. Instead, he runs the other way off him. Incredibly poor, just letting Berg do whatever he likes. And the same goes for Darragh Lenihan, who at first picks up a position on the defensive line as deep as everyone else is, and puts no pressure on Berger, allowing him to turn and get his shot off. And in fairness, it's a good strike in at the far corner, and yeah, it could have set Middlesbrough in good stead for a very, very long afternoon, but that wasn't the case. Boro did eventually gain a foothold in the game, although it did feel that with that early goal it could have been a torrid afternoon.
Yeah, it certainly worried me. I can't lie. We were just speaking before starting recording there, and I said, for whatever reason, not to be too negative, I was really, really quite alarmed and a little bit nervous about today's game. I thought that Sheffield United could prove to be a very difficult test, and of course they did. But after that early goal, I thought, oh, here we go. This could be a real long afternoon. But of course, quite positively, that wasn't to be the case. As you say, though, so important that we sort of got back in the game relatively quickly and sort of made it known that we weren't just going to lie down and accept Sheffield United to run the game. Good work down the right-hand side. We usually see crooks in that right-hand side channel. Of course, Paddy McNair today has the ball played into him, first time pass round the corner for Isaiah Jones. Jones gets to the byline, fizzes it across the 6-yard box, and Chuba ghosties in at the back post, chugging his arms as he does on the Chuba train, and just taps in for the equaliser. And it was a lovely moment, I must say, because you could see how much it actually meant for Chuba Akpom to get on the score sheet.
Yeah, it was important to get back into the game, and Juba was on the end of it. A good move, working it out towards that right-hand side. Jones knocking it into Dijksteel and then immediately getting on his bike in behind. Dijksteel knocking it to McNair. McNair finds Jones's run, and then, yeah, it's pretty plain sailing from then on. We all know what happens when Jones gets down that line and has the option to put that ball across the 6-yard box. And, yeah, as you say, Chuba, middle of the goal, about 5 yards out, easy tapping, and it's back in the game, back level. It gave the crowd a lift. It certainly gave Chuba a lift as well. I think it only just boosted his confidence through the roof. If he wasn't already confident with the way he's been playing in the past few weeks, then that goal was bound to give him a lot more of it. Put us back in the game at 1-1 in what was quite a feisty encounter, I felt, in that first half. A few challenges going in quite late. Just in the build-up to that goal as well. Felt Marcus Forss did really well to just pin John Egan and knock that ball off. I think it was into McGree before it was spread out wide. Yeah, felt he did really well there to just deal with the physicality of the Sheffield United centre-half. So let's be honest, just very big physical, dominant centre-halves in this division. So, yeah, fair play to him for that. And, yeah, back in the game at 1-1.
Yeah, as you say, it was a little bit feisty, wasn't it? Plenty of what's the word? Not late challenges, but just a bit of grit and a bit of, here and there, the odd sort of leave one in on them sort of tackle happening. I think we saw that from Johnny Austin, Billy Sharp, and, you praised him. I think everyone would agree that Billy Sharp is the type of player you want in your team. But if he's not in your team, you hate him. But if he is in your team, you absolutely love him. Tries to kick the ball away from Howson, and Howson just absolutely belts the ball off him. And I loved that, to be honest, because I just thought, Billy Sharp knows exactly what he's doing, and it's not just Middlesbrough, of course. It's not in any sort of championship ground. He knows how to wind people up. He knows how to get that little bit of banter, as you said last week, going with any section of fans, whether he's at Bramall Lane or if he's, travelling here, there or everywhere in the championship. And I just thought it's not a huge determining moment in the game, but it was almost from Johnny Howson as if to say, well, you're not going to come here and sort of take the piss out of us. If you're going to dish it out, then at least expect it. And, although some people might not place massive importance on that, I actually feel that it set a good precedent, from our point of view.
Yeah, you don't want sides coming to your own ground and sort of thinking that you're a pushover and they're just going to be physical with you and bully you. And at times it felt like Sheffield United were trying to do that. And in all fairness to them, that's completely fine. If you want to play that way, then you've just got to give it back to them. And We did towards the end. In the early spells of the game, they did bully us in spells, going in late on challenges, kicking the ball away, just being like sort of gnarly and a bit of bite in challenges, and that's fine. But we need some players as well in there that have that bite, have that sort of just nastiness about them, and just be able to give it out and dish it out to other sides as well. If they want to dish it out at the Riverside, then they're going to get it back. So yeah, I was quite happy with that, as well as George Baldock and Wilder having a little bit of a ding dong as well. Two old compatriots there at Sheffield United, and yeah, it was a very feisty game at times, but I think everyone loves a bit of that in the Championship, loves a bit of fight and battle. So yeah, a good afternoon.
Yeah, it almost had that little feel of a derby. Of course, I'm not in any way saying that it is a derby, no matter how much people try and force the sort of a Yorkshire thing. I'm not buying it myself. Yeah, but it did have that slight feel, as you say, that great a few late challenges. And I thought the atmosphere was brilliant. And, Wilder said it in his post-match interview, fair play to the Sheffield United fans, because they brought it in good numbers as well. And, it felt like... not that every game isn't when you're at home, but there just felt like there was that little extra bit of something riding on today's game, especially once the game started. And obviously, it makes it all the more sweeter that the fact that we didn't actually lose the game. But from that point onwards, in the first half, actually, there was a lot of that going on, as we say, late challenges. The atmosphere was there, but there wasn't all too many real chances for the remainder of the first half, to be honest. A lot of the ball was in the midfield, and it was going to be a battle. They line up in a very similar way to what we do. Of course, they sometimes opt for the diamond in that three, where perhaps we go for more of a defensive sitter in house, and then Ivan McGree and Crooks, obviously Paddy McNair in that Crooks role today. But yeah, it was very well contested, to be honest. I think that's the best way to put it. But after the break, substitutions at half time occurred, and I think a few people probably thought that Dale Fry was coming off due to a knock. It transpires that actually that was a tactical change, and Wilder put it down to the fact that he felt we were too deep in the first half. Interesting comments in the fact that Dale Fry wasn't actually meant to play today. So I guess obviously that would probably be put down to the fact that Crooks, his illness must have been from the last sort of 24, 48 hours. But yeah, I think there was a few times where Fry tried to play long and got it wrong and clipped it out of play. Wasn't really up to his usual standards. But a tough test against Billy Sharp. And I think, to be honest, again, it just reaffirms everything that you said before. We need that balance on the left-hand side of the back three, because Bowler comes on. And although he's not a traditional centre-back, he does definitely offer you the balance with that left foot.
Yeah, he does. And it just felt a lot more stable, really, in that second half. As you say there, Dale Fry coming up against Billy Sharp after getting 90 minutes in his legs in midweek and just coming off the back of a slight knock. Yeah, it probably wasn't the best sort of circumstances to be going in the game, especially when he probably wasn't meant to start, as Wilder said. Billy Sharp is one of the best forwards in the division, even as he's aging now. And yeah, both. Yeah, it was always going to be a difficult test for Dale. And And with moving Darrell Lenihan back into the centre, it did give us that balance, and it made us look a lot more comfortable and just a better side really in that second half. And as Wilder said, too deep in the first half with Dale in the team, and I think you could see the change in that second half with Boro being a bit more. It felt sort of more expansive, and perhaps that was because we were pushed higher up the pitch, and yeah, it was just a lot more comfortable to watch, I feel.
Yeah, I agree. And I think definitely, it's, well, Wilder's made the fact that he wants that left-sided centre-back. It remains to be seen who that. But even from Darrell Lenihan's perspective, I don't think he felt massively comfortable playing on the left-hand side. There was a few times where he sort of dived into things that he probably didn't need to in the first half. And as you say, it just looked more comfortable. It looked more natural with Bowler in that back three. Into the second half now. Again, I think the first real, clear-cut chance that I can remember was the Ryan Brewster header. Of course, he replaced Billy Sharp at half-time. And I've got to say, I don't really remember where the chance comes from. I just remember Brewster sort of finding himself into the box unmarked and almost not heading it backwards, but sort of stretching to try and get a header on target. And in fairness to Zach Steffen, he makes a very, very good save to tip it past the post.
Yeah, the chance, if I remember rightly, comes from Steffen doing his usual sort of just easy pass into Lenihan for him to then step forward and play a ball into midfield. And Tuba's dropped in deep, and quite similar to Brentford's absolutely dismantling of Man United yesterday. Tuba plays the Christian Eriksen role, and Sheffield, I can't remember the player for the life of me. It may have been Norwood that followed him in. Cuts off the pass that Tuba tried to play into Anthony Dijksteel, and then clips a ball towards Brewster, who, in fairness, does well to direct the header on target and forces Steffen into a really good save. A chance that probably just didn't need to be given away. Boro perhaps trying to force it with the possession and playing out from the back, but a slight let off, as well as one that was, I think it was a moment earlier as well, where Steffen was sort of clambering back towards his line after a ball had been played down the channel. Brewster had chased it, Steffen had came for it, and Steffen did make a good save, but then Brewster did get a rebound and tried to direct it on target, and it was cleared away. So yeah, Brewster coming on, providing Sheffield United with a bit more pacing behind, a bit of something different compared to Billy Sharp, and yeah, nearly forcing Boro into 2 errors. So yeah, quite a slow start to the second half from Boro.
Yeah. And I think, to be honest, up until that point, as you say, we looked more balanced, but there wasn't really an awful lot of clear sort of cut chances. But as you would really expect, because, Sheffield United are a team that are looking to be up the higher echelons of the league. So, it was never going to be a case of Middlesbrough throwing bodies forward and really creating it. Sometimes in games like that, you have to sit in and sort of do your jobs. But the real sort of sucker punch from Sheffield United's point of view, well, rather our point of view, I guess the sucker punch was a throw in from the left-hand side, and it's thrown in, and Darrell Lenihan, after the first contact of the ball, again, apologies, I can't remember who makes the initial contact from the throw-in. Without being too harsh, Lenihan's just a little bit asleep, sort of misses the fact that Ndiaye wriggles away from him, and Ndiaye then gets past him, gets to the byline. And to be honest, I was waiting as the cross, rolled across the face of the box. A Sheffield United player to come bombing in at the back post and stick it in, but actually it was a person in a Middlesbrough shirt that actually rifled the ball into the back of the net. Ryan Giles, of course, tries to swing a right boot at it and clear the ball and just gets it horribly, horribly wrong. Fires the ball. I think Wilder joked afterwards and said it was a great finish from an attacking point of view, and it certainly was. A bit of a disaster, really, but I don't think a lot can be said. We're certainly not going to absolutely hone in on Ryan Giles because he's been one of the brightest parts of our season at this point.
Yeah, he has been, and slightly unfortunate, as you say. That throw in from the left-hand side comes from a Lenihan sliced clearance. Max Lowe takes the throw in, and the man who makes the initial contact is Oliver Norwood. On the replay, you can see Chuba has dropped in deep again and points to Norwood whilst speaking to Anthony Dijksteel to say, and few pick him up. And in the end, no one does pick him up. Norwood sort of prods the ball forward with the sole of his foot. And as you say, Lenihan's asleep, and Dye is in behind with his electric pace. And there's not a lot that Ryan Giles can do with the clearance because just because of the sheer pace on the cross that's fizzed in by and Dye, but perhaps just the awareness that no one's actually behind him, that he could have just let it go. But yeah, a goal conceded just because of too many errors, really, in that passage of play. The initial error not to pick him up in the middle of the park, Norwood. Then the initial error of not following and Dye, and then the clearance. So 3 errors there in one passage of play results in a goal conceded. And on the balance of things, Sheffield United probably didn't deserve it at the time of the game. There wasn't a lot going on, but they didn't really threaten all too much to a point where they deserved that to go in front again. So yeah, Boro again putting themselves in a position where they have it all to do.
Yeah, they certainly did. But it was that man that helped get Boro back on level terms. From that point onwards, I felt, the atmosphere, that's when it really plays a part, especially with Giles. I'm sure his head and confidence would have took a little bit of a knock from the own goal, but quickly, the atmosphere sort of suggested, well, don't let your heads drop. We're still with you. And from a corner, Giles gets the ball from the right-hand side this time, crosses to the back post. And actually, the two people that we highlighted in terms of probably could have done a little bit better for the Sheffield United goal to make it 2-1 combine. Giles floats across to the back post. Lenihan, as he loves to do, just loves heading the ball, rises, gets up, gets everything that he possibly can onto the ball, headed towards the 6-yard box. And then Chuba Akpom is waiting to head that initial header into the back of Sheffield United's goal and get us the equaliser. And actually, in fairness, although it may look a sort of easy finish, I think it's actually a very good header from Akpom.
Yeah, it is. At first, I thought he was offside from where we were sat. You look at Chuba there, almost maybe 8 yards out. When he heads it in, I don't know. I just felt that he was offside. I had a look towards the linesman when Chuba did race off celebrating, and thought, thank God you haven't got your flag up. What I did notice from the linesman a lot was he did wag his finger when he wasn't going to give a decision, which was quite good. So, yeah, was pleased to see him not do that. But as you say, a well-worked corner in all fairness. A bit different to what we usually go with Giles just looking to put the in-swinger in as per. But a short one, Giles to Jones. Jones then shifts it to Giles again to change the angle up. Dara does well, in all fairness. I think he had to check back to then win that header. And yeah, Tuba does well, anticipates Lenihan winning that header, anticipates where the ball's going to end up. And I mean, it must be so difficult to sort of flick that on, re-divert where the ball's going with so little time to decide where you're going to put it. But he's used that power that's been generated by Lenihan, directed it into the corner. Tuba has two, Boro have the equaliser. And from then on, it did feel like Boro were going to try and get that winner.
Yeah, and as you say, from that point onwards, you could hear the smoke coming out the top of the Tuba Express, just leaving the station, and hundreds, in fact, hundreds is probably underselling, thousands of tickets being bought, of course, for the Tuba train. Do you know what? I actually had it was quite weird, to be honest. If anyone had seen me, they would have thought, why is that freak sort of laughing to himself? And I just remember in our first podcast, me and you almost having a little bit of a giggle at the fact that Tuba was back into the fold. And as he sort of wheels away to put that one in, I just thought, he's actually our best striker at the moment. Well, not even just at the moment. He is our best striker. And, absolutely credit to him. He could have easily thrown his toys out the pram. He could have said, well, you didn't want me, I don't want you, type of thing. But he's come back in, worked his socks off. His overall play has been very good. And he's just capped it off today, that sort of absolute redemption arc with two goals. And, of course, he'd already said it, Wilder, that he'd be staying, but he reconfirmed that and said, Tuba, with a very humble interview post-match, sort of said, oh, well, we're just taking it one day as it comes. And Wilder was having none of it. He's here to stay now, and absolutely credit to him. He deserves all the plaudits that he's getting at the moment. So, yeah, a real nice moment, wheeling away over to sort of the stand that makes all the noise, where the Red Faction boys are, and just that South stand in general. Yeah, a great moment. And although there wasn't, a full house, it felt like, just going back to what I said earlier, I thought the atmosphere was just excellent today. I really, it's not often that you come away from a draw and think, I really, really enjoyed that. But in general today, I thought, even if you weren't a Middlesbrough fan, it was a great, great spectacle for a championship football match.
It was a good game between two sides that are no doubt going to be up there at the top of this division come the end of it. Two sides that have quality in abundance really throughout each side, and also have a bit of fire in the belly there, flying into some tackles. There was a bit of that fieriness on shore, plenty of desire. At times, the quality may have lacked in the final third, but 2 goals for either side, and there could have been a winner for both probably as well.
Yeah, they could have, and I think the best chance really from either side's point of view comes from Duncan Watmore. Ryan Giles again involved. Could have quite easily dropped his head. He does the complete opposite, starts wanting the ball even more, gets into his traditional channel, of course, the left-hand channel, beats his fullback, whips an incredible ball in, and just, again, I'm sure I'm going to do it on every podcast this season, but his ability to deliver a ball wherever he wants from the left-hand side. His left foot is a thing of beauty, to be honest. Onto a plate for Duncan Watmore. You're waiting for the net to bulge. And as we spoke about a few weeks ago, and as we spoke about in the Barnsley game, ironically, an absolutely golden opportunity for Duncan Watmore, and he hits the post from probably no less than, I'd be generous and say 6 yards out. For me, he's got to score. I know you were sort of laughing at the fact that I was so critical of the finish, but it goes back to the fact if you've got let's say a Billy Sharp, for example, there, it's 3-2. And I think that's as brutal as I can sort of be, but I just think it's the truth. I think Watmore has to score, and he doesn't manage to do that.
Yeah, a chance to win the game once again. 2 home games in a row now where Duncan Watmore's missed chances. Sorry, not 2 home games in a row, 2 home league games in a row, but 3 games if you want to count the cup as well. So 3 games this season where Duncan Watmore has missed chances, all at that end as well, in front of the south stand, every single chance at that end. One that would have won us the game against West Brom, one that would have stood us in good stead early on in that cup tie in midweek, and one that may have won us the game today. As you say, Giles, fantastic to pick his head up, and his deliveries are just unbelievable. Every single time they're on the money. And yeah, John Egan sliding in to try and flick that away for a corner, just misses him, just shows the precision of Giles's pass. And I think Watmore does everything right, in all fairness to him. He goes with that right foot to flick it on, and he side foots it in with height. And I do think that Fotheringham's beaten as well. It's hit the post.
Definitely beaten, yeah.
Yeah, it's hit the post. And I think had that rattled the net, then the Riverside roof would have ripped off, because it was a fantastic day, really. A proper football day. Although it being a Sunday, Sheffield United brought probably the most fans that we'll see at the Riverside this season, because every other championship club, their away support's just not that great. Okay, we may see more from Sunderland. I kind of forgot that they were even in the same division. But yeah, the sun was shining, 2 sides going head to head, toe to toe with each other, and the atmosphere was good between both sets of fans. So it would have topped off a really, really good day, but Boro were made to settle for the point. And on the balance of things throughout the full game, I think a point was fair for both sides, and both sides will take that point.
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, we had a golden chance to win it. Of course, didn't take that, but I think on reflection across the full game, I think a point was probably a fair result from either team. You know, of course, Sheffield United may be a little bit more disappointed because they go in front twice. But actually, I think it shows more in a positive sense for Middlesbrough, the fact that we've bounced back, to put it like Wilder did, get back up off the canvas and go again. And, you know, to use a boxing term, it did feel like 2 heavyweights were sort of just going punch for punch with each other. It was a really, really good game, enjoyable. You know, as you say, two sides that will, I would imagine, be at the top end of the championship at the back end of this season. And yeah, credit to both sides, because it was a good spectacle all round, really. In terms of looking, you know, overall at the start of the season, we've had it difficult, haven't we? Because West Brom, similar to Sheffield Wednesday. God, that won't win me any support in the Sheffield area. Sheffield United, of course, I meant, similar to West Brom, and the fact that they have quality in abundance, and even on the bench, you look, Ryan Brewster comes on. I think he was near enough 20 million. It's certainly 15 to 20. McBurney was between 15 and 20. They brought Kahadra off. I always worry that I pronounced that wrong, but it was a real threat for Blackburn all of last season. In fact, no, he didn't even get on in the end, but on the bench, he was about to get on and didn't. They have the two boys on loan from City, Doyle and McAtee, who, again, quality at this level of football. And, I think a few people are a little bit sort of disheartened that we haven't managed to get that first 3 points of the season yet. Okay, yes, QPR, I think, has to just be written off. There's so many individual errors in the first half performance, which is probably as bad as you'll see all season. But are you relatively happy considering, when you sort of bring in the context of the fact that our squad is likely to look, or at least we all hope it will look completely different by the time the transfer window's over and done with?
To a point, I'd say yes. Was happy on the opening day at the time with a point against West Brom. Felt that after the first half, West Brom battered us in that second half for long periods of it. So point was probably fair. Today, point was probably fair against a very, very good side in this division. But the one that's so infuriating and will continue to, I won't be able to get over it for a good few months if we continue.
Until we get that first 3 points on the board, it's going to eat away at you, isn't it?
Yeah, that first half performance at QPR last week was just an absolute disgrace and has cost us a point, probably all three, against a side that, out the three that we've played so far, is comfortably the worst out the three that we've played so far. So we've taken points off West Brom and Sheffield United in home fixtures for us, which, in fairness, they'll probably be saying that they've taken points off us rather than vice versa, because they've played that away game and taken a point at the Riverside. And we've got a QPR, and in that first half we simply rolled over, and it's gonna annoy me until that first 3 points comes in. So yeah, we've got two fixtures in the next week now where I think if it's still no win on the board come next week, I might be a little bit more infuriated than I am just thinking about that last week's performance.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat again, really, that although the result against QPR it's sickening, really, that first half, you look back on it. But from the points that we've taken, okay, yes, home games, but against opposition that you'd expect to be up there at the end of the season, relatively happy. I think the real frustration from me comes with the fact that, actually, partly due to the fact that the window doesn't close prior to the season, I'm like Chris Wilder and probably most people, I'm very much of the belief that the transfer window should never be, at least the summer transfer window should never be, stretching beyond that first game. All your business should be wrapped up before then. But yeah, the frustration comes from the fact that I look at the Sheffield United game and I look at the West Brom game, and without being too critical on Duncan Watmore, and think, if that had been we'll get into it later, and of course, that's a whole different topic to discuss. But if it had been a Strand Larsen or a Rodrigo Muniz, maybe he's on the end of those chances, it probably would have been 6 points from 2 games. And then you're really thinking, well, I tell you what, against 2 sides like West Brom and like Sheffield United, that's a really, really impressive start. But I think it's, of course, with the players we've lost, I think everyone kind of thought, well, once Jed Spence is gone, we'll just start spending willy-nilly. And obviously that hasn't been the case. And it's probably a sensible approach. We don't want to be overspending and putting ourselves at risk in the future. But yeah, overall, I'd say I'm probably content at the moment. But of course, we still are crying out for those extra bodies and those positions and numbers that Chris Wilder once filled. Moving on, I guess slightly from today's game, the questions that we'll be answering are still somewhat related, of course. But to the listener questions that we asked for after the game today, always a good part of the podcast to hear other people's opinions on what's going on. And it sort of differentiates from us to just waffling rubbish sometimes. Marco gets in touch, first of all, in the comments on Twitter, and asks what is going on with Isaiah Jones. And actually, coming home from the game today, listening to the BBT's post-match phone-in, there seemed to be a lot of criticism for Isaiah Jones. And although I don't think he's hit the heights of what he did during that purple patch last season, I feel like it's a little bit unjustified, some of the criticism. A few times, okay, yes, and a few times against QPR, he made bad decisions and he sort of jumped into challenges today. But I think, for me at least, I'm kind of aware that Isaiah Jones is in the team as someone that's going to affect things in an attacking sense. Okay, yes, he's a wing back, but in the modern game, you see plenty of wing backs that are, Trent Alexander-Arnold's your main example. I don't think anyone's massively convinced with his defensive ability, but he's purely in the Liverpool team for his attacking output. I don't know about you, Nathan. I just feel, he, of course, opened the scoring against West Brom. He gets an assist today. And I feel a part of the criticism saying that he won't run at people, he doesn't look as direct. I think it's a little bit unjustified, and I think it's really down to the fact that he was that good at stages of last season that people sort of expect that he's always going to be sort of the championship Cafu or the championship Trent Alexander-Arnold, when he's still putting in performances where he's affecting games. It's just he's probably not reaching the levels of where he's going and getting a goal or an assist every single game.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's a player that is certainly in the team for his attacking output, and we're 3 games into the season and he's scored once and set one up. So there you go. He's certainly contributing in that sense. In terms of his directness, I can see people being slightly frustrated with it. Of course, last year, one of the big plus points of Isaiah Jones was he'd stand up a fullback 1v1 and, in pretty simple words, just kill him. Really, he'd throw in a step over and be gone by the time you'd seen his leg step over the ball. So we're not seeing that as much as we did last season because of, towards the back end of last season, teams tripling up on him to stop him. And this season, we've seen sort of the same Isaiah Jones to a point as we did towards the back end of last season, where he's perhaps trying to put crosses in earlier than he was last season. So can see the frustration possibly, but think that just battering him is a bit unjustified. As you say as well, in a defensive aspect of the game, perhaps diving in a bit too much. We saw it twice today in the same passage of play, dived in on Reece Norrington-Davis, who just sidestepped him and was in down that left-hand side. And then Jones, in fairness, does well to recover, but then looks like he could have gave away a penalty, which, I mean, I haven't seen it back, but it looked like it possibly could have been a foul. So just needs to keep that composure in defensive situations, because you know what referees in the Championship are like. In fairness, the referee today let a lot of things go, but referees will just give soft ones at times, and today could have been one of them moments. But just re-answering the question, just in terms of what's going on with him, I don't think a whole lot's going on with him, if I'm honest. I think he's still the same Isaiah Jones we saw last season. He's just concentrated his game a lot more compared to what it was last season.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that, certainly. And I think, you know, of course, you're always going to get certain sections on social media, but I almost feel like, to an extent, sort of, because Tav's no longer there, he often split a lot of opinion that sometimes, you know, fans have got to have one person that they sort of like to have a bit of an argument about. And I certainly think if I was to look at our team and pick out problems, Jones would probably be, you know, certainly not at the front of that list. So I don't think we need to make a sort of big issue out of that. Moving on to the next question, Danny tweeted in and asked who was selling bucket hats near, I think he said the underpass in the tweet. I'm guessing that's the underpass coming up from sort of town where McDonald's and Subway is. I'm a little bit disappointed that I was only made aware of this after the game, to be honest, because if someone was selling Middlesbrough bucket hats, I probably would have had myself one of them, actually.
Yeah, I'd have been all over it as well. Now I've seen that question. I don't know who's been selling them. I think whoever was selling them was in the hope that we'll be seeing a reduced crowd at the Riverside in 2 weeks because everyone will be off to Leeds Festival in the Boro bucket hats. But yeah, I think they'd certainly be a very good addition to my wardrobe, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I mean, you went to Leeds Festival last year, didn't you?
I did.
Will you be attending again this year?
I won't be this year. I much prefer watching us get the ball starved of us by Swansea City at home, but you know what their defence is like. It's leaky, so could be 5-0 Boro. We'll see. We'll get onto that one in a few weeks.
Yeah, I think that statement will probably come back to haunt us, but we'll let it slide for the moment. But yeah, seriously, if anyone does find out who was selling bucket hats or if that's going to be a permanent thing, do let us know. Because although I don't come up from town when going to the match, I probably would try and arrive a little bit early and get my hands on one of them. Because as you say, I feel like it'd be a good addition to my wardrobe. And in fairness, just from a protection point of view, if the sun's going to continue to be like it was today and on Wednesday night, I think back of the head, especially for the people that may be receding or bald, it's a great bit of sun protection. And, you know, to rep a Boro bucket hat, then that's even better, really, isn't it? So, yeah, do let us know if you're aware if that's going to be a permanent thing, because me and Nathan will be down next home game. We'll have one. Not sure on the price as well, but, you know, we'll see what we can do in terms of that. Back on the game today, and sort of in fairness, we have kind of covered it a little bit. Liam asks about sort of the centre halves, the back three, and did ask sort of, I think he just put Darragh Lenihan with a question mark. I'm guessing just what's our opinions on him. I think we sort of covered the back three in terms of we still are crying out for that left-sided centre half. So I think that answers that. But just in terms of Lenihan, similar to Jones, getting a little bit of stick off the back of today and off the opening couple of games, of course, got sent off at QPR. Potentially part at fault for the second goal and arguably the first goal today. I've similarly sort of come to the conclusion that I don't think he's as bad as what certain sections are trying to make out. I think he's a centre half that at every opportunity will try and play out. I think that's what Chris Wilder likes. And although sometimes it's a little bit heart and mouth, I'm actually a fan of it. I think, especially second half, I know I said to you, a lot of the time he was being left 1v1 with Ryan Brewster, and he pretty much won every duel against him. Okay, yes, I think there was once maybe Brewster got in behind him, but for the large part of it, Lenihan kept on winning those battles. And I think actually criticism again is a little bit unjustified. A lot of people saying, why did we sign him? And I'm definitely not in that camp at all. And also you have to factor in the fact, he's got on the end of Giles's cross and played his part in the equaliser. So he sort of makes up for some of his errors in the game. Nathan, I know we sort of spoke about it before we started recording, but for me, any criticism of Darren Lenihan's, I think a little bit earlier start sort of judging him on, not being good enough to be in that back three. I think he's definitely shown signs to me so far that he can be a valuable player to us this season.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. In that first half, he did look poor, in all fairness, but he's been played out of position. He's been played as a left-sided centre-half in that first half. He was left a little bit exposed at times by McGree, not being that defensive wall in front of him that Marcus Tavernier possibly was in the past for those left-sided centre-halves. But in the second half, certainly, as centre-half in the middle of that back three, I felt he looked a lot more comfortable winning those headers against Ryan Brewster when it's needed. If he misses those headers, Brewster's in behind. We know his pace is going to be significantly of a much stronger attribute for Ryan Brewster than it is for Darragh Lenihan. And yeah, he did well to deal with him and then deal with Ollie McBurney when he came on, a different forward to Brewster, of course, with his much more physical attributes. So did feel like he did well in that second half, especially. And yeah, of course, he plays a massive part in the goal as well. And throughout, really, in Boro attacking wise from set pieces, he's a big part and a big threat for us in there. I think once you have Darragh Lenihan and Matt Crooks heading towards the 18-yard box, it's going to cause a bit of carnage for opposition sides, as we saw last week at QPR. So, yeah, he's going to be an important member of this side. So there's just going to be time that needs to be taken by fans to just let him bed in, let him understand his role in this side. He's been brought in as not only a player to improve the defensive line, but as a leader for this squad as well. So he needs time to bed in and boost his confidence slightly. So I'm sure an assist won't have hampered that.
Yeah, definitely. Moving on now again to transfers, Nathan, as we say, the window continues to rumble on. And we saw a little bit of movement. I guess you can interpret it as somewhat of a positive to Middlesbrough. Really, the obvious and quite clear target for that left-sided centre-back role. Jacob Greaves has rejected another new contract from Hull City. And And I think, judging from Hull's fans' reaction, this is due to the fact that a lot of high earners, you look at Tufan that's gone in there, and you look at Jean-Michel Seri as well, who undoubtedly will be on a lot of money under their new regime. And I think Greaves is probably demanding something close to the figures that those players are on. Of course, he's vice captain at Hull. He's considered one of their better players, and I think he just wants to be valued as much as what they are. And at the moment, he obviously doesn't feel that. I think, obviously, off the back of that, we'll probably make a fresh approach. But I guess you've got to see it as a positive, because until that new contract is signed, Boro still have a chance, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And despite him still playing every game for Hull, even yesterday he played in a back four in their win against Norwich. I do feel that we are still in for him. He is the top target, as we've seen from a few sources talking about Boro and their pursuit of a left-sided centre-half. We've spoken about him over the last few weeks because it's the link that won't go away because of this contract situation. And as you say, the longer this contract situation goes on, the more us Boro fans are going to take it as, oh, well, he must be interested in moving on if he's still not signing that contract that they're offering him. So, yeah, I think that we probably aren't too far away from Hull's valuation as of yet. But whether we go in with their actual valuation or just below to continue to test the waters, I do not know. So we are certainly in desperate need of a left-sided centre-half, an actual centre-half to fill that role. Bowler's filled in there well in cameos, but we do need that presence in there, and Greaves is that man. Tall, physical, just a true centre-half, and he would be a fantastic addition, but whether that one comes to fruition, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and just as you were talking about in there, you may have noticed, if you're watching on YouTube, Nathan, you probably did, I was just having a quick flick through my phone, just purely to see if there's anything happening, because you never know. We always sort of risk it, don't we, recording this podcast and just hope nothing comes out, and that we're miles off it by the time we're finished. But no, nothing there. As we record, nothing seems to have broken at the moment. One thing that has happened before the time of recording, that man Jorgen Strand Larsen has made fresh comments. He is just not a happy bunny, is he, Nathan? He wants a move. He's ready to go. Middlesbrough, of course, during the week, by all accounts, have submitted another offer closer to the 13 million euros mark. I think it was 11 million euros that we have offered, which is roughly, I think, £9 million. For me, the next logical step for Larsen would be a transfer request. Without actually submitting a formal one, he's pretty much done the public version of one of them. He's made it so evidently clear he wants to move. There was a bid from Italian club later on last week. The name escapes me, to be honest, and to be truthfully honest, I'd never even heard of the side before the bid went in. But, again, he mentions England, he mentions the top 5 leagues. The ESPN interviewer, I'm not sure who it is, but he just won't let go of the fact that Middlesbrough are interested in him. And he's again just confirmed he's disappointed the way that Groningen are dealing with the situation. And he just wants out. He wants to be part of Chris Wilder's mighty Reds, and who could blame him, to be honest, Nathan?
No, I definitely can't blame him. It's been a funny old week. Of course, we saw last week the interview following Groningen's 2-2 draw in the opener of the Eredivisie season, where Larsson did make it clear initially of his disappointment. But today, as well, after a defeat, it became all the more apparent. News in the week of Boro's rejected bid and the Gazette saying that it looked like Middlesbrough were going to be ending their pursuit of him. And today, he set one up, in all fairness to him. Again, starting up front for Groningen, away at Ajax, probably the toughest game that you're going to get all season, in fairness, at the Eredivisie. And they got battered 6-1, but he set the goal up. He's come out in the interview again, and he's made it all the more apparent. As you say, the interviewer just kept on reiterating the name Middlesbrough, Middlesbrough, Middlesbrough want you. What about Middlesbrough? Are you interested? And it's clear that he wants a move, whether that's to England to play and get that move to the next club in the Premier League, or be it with Middlesbrough, hopefully in a promotion season, or playing in Italy and eventually getting a move off the back of playing for one of those clubs in Italy, because it's clear that his end goal is to play in the Champions League, as most professional players it is. So, yeah, as you say, the next logical step seems to be handing in that formal transfer request, because he's pretty much done it in all but name at this moment in time. He's made it very apparent that he wants out of Groningen. Although he does keep saying, "Oh no, but I am happy here. I am happy here. I'm not forced."
I do love that, how he sort of almost thinks that he's outweighing the whole outburst of, yeah, I'm not happy. It's like, I think one of the quotes was something along the lines of, it's like dealing with a brick wall or something like that, trying to make them understand that I want to go. But then sort of occasionally just drops in, well, I'm still playing. So, I mean, I guess that's all right. And, I mean, again, I said it in the last podcast, it is quite funny, because if that was a Middlesbrough player, I'd just be pulling my hair out, going berserk, ranting on here, on Twitter, do me dinger, to be honest. And it's not our situation. We're on the other end of it, which is a little bit different than usual. But I imagine the Groningen fans are not happy at all. I think a few of them have cottoned on to the fact that we've tried to start the free Jorgen Strand Larsen hashtag and are not happy at all with that. So, yeah, we look forward to hopefully getting a more positive update on that. But for the moment, I don't think Big Strand, I'm going to call him, is happy at all staying in the Eredivisie.
Doesn't look the case. Doesn't look the case. And the ESPN reporter, as he said, thinks, "Oh, within a week you're out. Within a week."
I love how he actually added to that. I'm glad you've mentioned that, because I think it was something along the lines of, honestly, once people, without sort of the usual maybe English media approach of just things, and maybe he's not being direct, he sort of said to Larson, listen, once people have seen this interview, they'll all know that you want out, and I think give it a week, they'll just say, yeah, you can go, mate. So, I mean, if that approach works, then we probably all owe the interviewer a pint, or at least a round of applause from our perspective, because he'll have played his role if that's how it all pans out. So fair play to ESPN for going at it like they have. Moving on to next week's action, the first midweek trip of the Championship season. Stoke City, we went there last year. One of the standout memories was you ironically trying to get a "Ain't Nobody Like Joe Lumley" chant going, just to annoy me more than anything. It did annoy me, so fair play. You got me on that one. We're not even going to be drawn into his performance yesterday. Hopefully, it's a better performance this year. And actually, I've just remembered again, and I don't want to really, it seemed like I'm going at him again. But Watmore missed a complete sitter at Stoke away last season as well, which is worryingly quite a common theme. Beaten yesterday off Huddersfield, who haven't had the best start of the season. And I'm going to mention him, Nathan. I know you've pleaded with me not to. We were linked with him very heavily. Of course, it's Dwight Gale. We didn't do that deal. Stoke City did. It's almost written in the stars from a Stoke perspective that Dwight Gale scores against Middlesbrough on Wednesday night.
There's the nail in the coffin.
Nathan, I had to say it. I know you didn't want me to, but I had to say it.
Yeah, so Dwight Gale signed for Stoke before the season started, in fairness, so fair play to them for getting that deal over the line before the season started and not mucking about with forwards like we are, but he still hasn't got that.
Don't, Nathan, I've already... I can't even get my words out. I'm just trying to frantically stop what you're about to say. For people that might not be aware, there is a stat belonging to Dwight Gale, of course, which is quite apparent since he signed for Stoke. I think you all can probably work out what that is. I think just because of the fact we've mentioned him, he's bound to score, and because of the links during the summer. But that's a one where if you are a betting man or woman, and you're sort of in that mind frame where you're actually willing to bet against your own team, Dwight Gale would be a very sensible bet, I feel, because it's just one of those things, isn't it? It's so almost written already. The script's done.
Free money.
Yeah. From a more sort of just anything to do with Stoke, getting off the topic of Dwight Gale, they do play five at the back, and included in that back five, arguably, I may be hitting another kiss of death here. Aidan Flint's part of that back five, made the move after leaving for free during the summer. I believe he's sporting a quite remarkable sort of headband, sort of circa 2005 Sergio Ramos look at the moment, which is bold to say the least from Big Flinty. I mean, that's terrifying me as well, because we all know the threat that he possesses at just about everywhere apart from Middlesbrough in the box. So, yeah, it's the storylines already there that have probably been written, if you believe in the sort of football gods type of thing, which by now I've got to admit, we've cursed ourselves that many times that do you want to just move on from Stoke, to be honest?
I'll just write this picture into your head already. I'll just throw it out there. I'm not gonna finish it, but I'll just throw this out there for you.
Yeah.
Lewis Baker cross, Aidan Flint knockdown, Dwight Gale tap.
Yeah. Lewis Baker, of course. You can hear my voice trembling already. Lewis Baker, of course, dealt a fairly difficult hand at Middlesbrough. And just randomly talking about Lewis Baker, showed fairly promising signs early on in his Middlesbrough career. Of course, come on loan. I think he scored in a cup game, if I remember rightly. And then Gary Monk, like he did with a few of our players, cast him aside, and Lewis Baker was nowhere to be seen for the rest of the season, apart from, I think, one sub-appearance whilst Pulis was in charge. So, as you say, that also adds to the narrative. We're going to quickly move on from that now, though, because we'll just talk ourselves or dig our hole even deeper. On Saturday, of course, a double game week. Reading away. Joe Lumley, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, can't actually play in the game due to his loan agreement. Of course, they will have had another game during the week, but yesterday were beaten 4-0 off Rotherham. Really struggling with injuries at the moment. Paul Ince is having a difficult time even registering players. I think that they've pretty much everything's done with Naby Sarr, and they still haven't been able to announce him. Sorry, despite that deal being done for 1 week, possibly even 2. I think might be stretching towards now. They also play a back five like Stoke do, like we mentioned. I hate to be that guy, but if we are looking to be a team that want to be at the top end of the championship, it's a game you look at and think we need to be picking up a positive result.
You're right. As pretty much as bang on as that is, you are right. You should be going to Reading and getting a positive result. They're a side that's really struggling. We saw yesterday Joe Lumley, and a typical Joe Lumley Saturday afternoon. We told you so, Reading fans. We did tell you so. And as I saw on Twitter, a QPR fan in the replies as well saying, we told you so and you told them so. So yeah, there we are with Joe Lumley. But yeah, really struggling Reading. 4-0 at the weekend. Doesn't get any easier for them. In midweek, they've got the difficult test of 3 wins on the bounce. Blackburn Rovers, the only side to go 100% so far in the championship. A difficult test for them this week, and then hopefully Blackburn have buttered Reading up for us on Saturday. It'd be nice to go there and get all 3 points, get that second win of the season after we beat Stoke in midweek. We're hopefully gonna break the sort of mold of going to Stoke on a cold Tuesday night and instead go on a warm Wednesday evening in August and get a positive result. So hopefully this time next week we're doing this podcast on the back of 2 wonderful results, 6 points in the pocket, and Boro sailing into the top half of the table.
Boro sailing into the top half of the table with a sweet Norwich. I can't even speak. The thought of it just really, really excites me, to be honest. Boro sailing into the top half of the table with a Norwegian prince leading the line. How about that, Nathan?
A Norwegian prince leading the line, a Yorkshireman in midfield, and a Yorkshireman in the heart of our defence on that left-hand side. It would be lovely, really, it would be lovely. However, we know what this lot are like behind the scenes. We know it's not that easy. We know it's not that easy to go away from home in the championship and get 2 wins on the spin. It wouldn't surprise me if this time next week we're sat here with none of the things that we're wishing will happen.
Yeah.
So there you are. We'll have to wait and see. But we'll take the positives. A good point today against Sheffield United, a good side in this division, a good day watching the Boro, my first league game of the season. So pleased to get back in the Riverside, watching the Boro. Cause you some heartache at times, but make you happy at other times. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see what this next week brings, but hopefully it's plenty of new signings and 6 points.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Just to end it on a little bit of a different note this week, I want to throw it back to early season podcasts last year. Because you were back in the Riverside today, of course, you missed the first home game through holiday. Did you opt for any palmos in a bun, or a pint, or just anything really?
I
To be honest,
did. I had a pint pre-match, settle the nerves, get back into the rhythm of being in the Riverside. Although I was at the game on Wednesday, so as I say, today was my first league game, but not my first time back in the Riverside this season. And I did opt for a chicken balti pie that was more than warm, is the way
is
I
it that
describe it.
yeah, Riverside food and drink? Okay, you definitely wouldn't be wanting one at the moment because it would take your tongue off and just make you evaporate. It's that hot. Hot chocolate or Bovril. You buy it before the game and you can't actually drink it until the full time because it's that hot. Um, Out of interest, what is actually the lager on draft at the Riverside at the moment? Because you know what, personal preference, I never ever opt for one at the match. Even
No, it's Bud Light. And then the ciders are Magners and Magners Dark Fruits as well.
yeah,
So plenty of options, but probably not the best drafts I've ever seen.
they've got more options than Middlesbrough have in their forward line, so
But they
perhaps
do.
get their act together. To balance things up between the sort of concourses and our actual first team squad. I think that's enough of me, Nathan, rambling on about the choice of food and beverage in the concourses. Of course, Middlesbrough was strange things and can make you delirious at times. Hopefully, it won't be making us delirious in a bad way next week. But from us this week, that has been another episode of the Boropolis Podcast. Please make sure to leave us a kind rating on any platform that you may watch or listen, and a review or a comment. That would be lovely as well. But yes, from me, Nathan, off the back of in, in the EFL Cup exit and a point on a more positive note today, that's been another episode of the Boropolis Podcast, and we'll see you again next week.